Good Tuesday morning to you. I am Chris. You're watching the Wiley Report, or maybe you're listening to it. I hope this message finds you doing well. So today, this is just like thoughts at the water cooler, or coffee and conversation. All of these thoughts are just my thoughts as I have been thinking about this for a little while, at least since last week. And I figured, you know what, I'll share it today. So all thoughts, all expressions are my own. These are not criticisms of any particular institution or organization. Just want to say that, because I always believe that while me, you, us can speak on any given subject, I definitely don't want to be offensive. Yet I realize that people bring a wide array of experiences to any conversation. And I just want to say again, I'm not coming for you. I'm not coming for anyone. I'm just sharing thoughts. So last week there was a lot of, you know what I'm calling this? I'm calling this, like I said, conversations at the water cooler. Basically, it's a discussion about white lives matter or Black lives matter. Just stay with me. So last week there were lots of social commentary on Kanye West and Candace Owens' shirt that read "White Lives Matter." Or better yet, I think it was on Instagram. Kanye West had a post that said "Black Lives Matter is a scam." The best commentary that I saw on Instagram or read was by Jenny Yashere, as well as Lanizi, Spelman alum, and she does great commentary intertwining social issues, experiences, and their connections to history. It's always really great. She does it from the parking lot sipping tea. Check that out. So I can't do any reads or any more justice to it, but I think about it because I'm interested in intersectionality. And I think one of the greatest and simultaneously challenging things about the internet is it gives people agency and a platform to share beliefs, ideas, and values to a wide array of people. Whether that's one person or many, the information, the ideas are out. And while there are a lot of people that I really wish that I could cut their internet and their platform off, I'm not always sure if that would be helpful, because while I might find it harmful or it might really be harmful, there's somebody else that is like totally thinking that whatever it is that they're reading is true. And I think there's a difference between what is true versus truth. And like I said, my interests relate to intersectionality and information science because that's what the Wiley Report is all about. And in case you're wondering, who are you? I'm Wiley. There you go. This week, we're reading, and I'm going to try to show the book. Yes, this week in my race and digital studies class, we're reading some different chapters from this book. It's the Intersectional Internet, Race, Sex, Class, and Culture Online. Is edited by Dr. Sophia Noble and Dr. Brendisha Tynes. More specifically, chapter 1 talks about digital intersectionality theory and the Black Lives Matter movement. The chapter opens with the quote, and I'm only reading a part of it. You got to get the book, go to your library, get the book. It's whether you're academic or not, it's really interesting because they're talking about online spaces and they write it at a level where you don't have to be an academic to understand or to relate to the content. So I love that. The chapter opens, like I said, with the quote by Alicia Garza, who's the co-founder of the Black Lives Matter movement. And when she states, when we say Black Lives Matter, we're talking about the ways in which Black people are deprived of our basic human right and dignity. It is an acknowledgement. Black poverty and genocide is state violence. It is the acknowledgement of 1 million Black people are locked in cages in this country. It is the acknowledgement that Black women continue to bear the burden of a reckless assault in our families is state violence, or queer and trans folks whose lives are disposed of like garbage and simultaneously fetishizes us and the profits off of us is state violence. Wherever you feel on that, those are her words, not mine. But the things that it brought up for me is thinking about intersectionality, images, visual representation, Black life, history, and state violence. Those are things that I thought about and how that connects to the commentary last week that was talking about, like, when you see shirts that say White Lives Matter, no matter who the person is that's wearing the shirt, or no matter who or you see it on a platform, and it could be a different group. And so I think it relates because a lot of people have consistently been studying movements or groups. Black Lives Matter movement, and what I found interesting in this book and just my own personal experiences is you're looking at text and you're looking at images and you're looking at videos that focus on the Black Lives Matter movement. Simultaneously, this subject is also studied theologically. Dr. Donald Edwardson, I interviewed him, Encouraging Your Spirit. Go check that out. He's talking about this issue as it relates to theology and in church space. Great conversation, great book. And I wasn't just plugging it, I'm just telling you, it's an interesting subject. Historians cite Brown versus Board of Education and the murder of Emmett Till as the catalyst for civil rights. 60 years later, the deaths of Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, and Freddie Gray have been thrust into the heightened protest around racial inequality. Yet, it's also true the authors talk about how Black women and girls are disproportionately over-policed and victims of police violence. And they too deserve sustained attention. There's also the concept of state violence, because I had to look up what does it mean when people say state violence. State violence is defined as the use of legitimate governmental authority to cause unnecessary harm and suffering to groups, individuals, and state. I confess, I don't know if I'm at a point where I call it state violence. Violence, yes, but I don't know. And I think I struggle with that because adding state to me puts burden or puts the responsibility of harm on a group, on an entity. And I understand that because I'm very much interested in how I even got interested in intersectionality is from the data ethics course and thinking about the problem of many hands and how when we're looking at things that have gone on historically, technologically, or in society, the question is often who is responsible. So when we look at violence, when we look at many of these issues as stated by the co-founder of Black Lives Matter movement, the ultimate centering question, or the question at the beginning of all of that, is who's responsible for that? Who bears that, and who can actually do something to actually change it? And not who will do something, is who will do something to change that. And I don't have the answer to that. I don't. But I think those are things that are running in the background. And I also think about the connectivity between social conversation, implication, and meanings of Black Lives Matter, because numerous groups, as I was saying, earlier in this conversation, have adapted this phrase to their group. So when you think of White Lives Matter, or All Lives Matter, or Everyone Counts or Nobody Counts, Blue Lives Matter, Brown Lives Matter, Migrant Lives Matter. Yet the challenge to these adaptations, in my opinion, is not solely their failure to credit the origination of who said it or the Black woman that framed it. So that's a problem that they don't mention that. Yet I believe also one of the benefits and challenges of social media is that it is a tool for empowerment of individuals claiming identification with multiple social groups and allowing them to positively affirm their unique positioning within society. The book mentions that. I didn't get the citation, but it's in the book. So I'm not trying to say that as a Chris statement, but I understand that. The goal of looking at these various groups online is that they can illustrate how visual and textual representation contribute to the mission of protest, as participants use themselves as embodiment of justice. Images that contradict each other allow participants to show their multiplicity of identities, which is to me the ultimate point of intersectionality, because people have more than one identity or not monolithic. Because when you think about Black people, Black life, Black experience, lived positionality, many of us, more than one thing is true about our identities, the way we show up in rooms. It's also true that our identities have meaning and implications in which we are not always in control of that narrative and that story. And I think often what you see socially is a lot of and in everyday life, people trying to to provide a counter narrative, and counter not in terms of negativity, but in another way to see us. Yet the ultimate issue is, are we seen? And I don't think all the time that's really the case. The thing I like about intersectionality is it's a lens. I love lens in the metaphorical experience as well as in its actual definition, because a lens is how you see. Is it clear or is it distorted? And in real terms, the only life I can discuss is Black life. You see this, Melanie. I've been a lot of other identities too, but the one thing that you see, whether you know about any of those identities or not, is you see this Blackness. Um, and I also think, what was missing in some of these social conversations is true versus what is truth. And also when we think about, the bigger context of intersectionality or just digital spaces, is what does Black liberation look like? What will it mean? And it's fascinating to me, because to me it's more than just the conversation that was had, when Kanye West or Candace Owen posted their images. It's deeper than that. And when I say it's deeper than that, I think about, like, last week on campus, they had four speakers in four different areas. One was in gender women's studies, when one of the speakers was talking about using the pedagogy of sweetness to think about the way colonialism feels. And she was from Mexico. Then there's the fact that, as Dr. Kendi was here October 6th and 7th, when they were talking about what it means to be anti-racist, and they had an entire, he was the key speaker. There's a lot of research and stuff that, people were doing that related to being anti-racist. So there was, that program that goes on. Then there was also the experience, I think it was Thursday night, there was a political conservative that was here talking about what it is to be a woman. People were a little concerned about that because that particular person is problematic in his beliefs. And the concern for safety of people was something that was mentioned, at least in my classes it was. And then there was also Friday, I went to this talk, I believe it was, I'm looking on my phone, his name is Professor Dr. Stacy A. Robinson. And it was, his talk was actually talking about sensory aesthetics, meaning what does Black liberation look, taste, smell, feel, sound like? What is our healing from colonial trauma? Freedom in our future. What is freedom? Why do we need to talk about it? How do we create it? Who defines it? When do we claim it? And where does it exist? And I was thinking about how all of those things are connected, because you have the visual and textual images of people wearing a White Lives Matter shirt. You have the visual textual representation of research that is about how to be anti-racist. Is that the goal? Is that really what we're trying to be? How do you do that in any space when you have a wide array of identities, expressions, races, beliefs, values, and ideas, and how sometimes many of those actually contradict each other? How do you provide support for people to grow, support for people to believe, support for people to exist, when some people have antithetical beliefs about the very word existence and who gets to be that, or how in many contexts it's still being defined of what it means to be free, what it means to be liberated. And when you look at histories, experience not just past, but present, and how there are often numerous struggles as it relates to people's very identity, especially when we're looking at Black life, and how sometimes people, aren't necessarily willing to discuss what is true versus what is truth. Truth is unchanging. I could say it is truth that the Constitution is a pro-slave document, but there are people who will fight me about that in the social streets, because somehow when you say that, or not just that, or you're unwilling to say that America is a racist country, People will fight you, literally maybe, or socially or online when you are unwilling in public spheres to really have an honest, truth-filled conversation about that. Because somehow there's a belief that if you say something, any sentence, that somehow you're negating the joy, negating the happiness, negating the fact that, negating any warmth or positivity about America. And there's also the symbolism of America. I mean, America in itself is known as was the home of the brave, the land of the free. Yeah, the challenge in that is that everybody isn't free. Everybody has not experienced that in ways that you would think. That's a real conversation. That doesn't necessarily mean that the people who've always experienced freedom are wrong. It just means that people have had disparate experiences. And when will we have real conversations about that? In real life, I think about this in a lot of different ways. For example, it was probably about 2 weeks ago. I was passing through a library, going to a mixer, and there was a student coming around the corner that was extremely upset because she couldn't check out a book because she had an iCard, and they told her that she couldn't check out the book, and she needed to prove that she was a student. Now, I think she eventually left. At the time, it was really hard to see that because one, it wasn't my actual library space, and on top of that, when those issues happen, at best, the only thing I can do is contact, circulation and talk with those people about that. So it was kind of like trying to hold space for a student because she was, I was walking, I was passing her, and she's saying, "Hey, you know what happened to me?" And I'm trying to hold space, and I'm just using that as that was her voice. I'm not making fun of her. Um, and I was trying to like say, okay, what's going on? How can I be of help? But then other people came, and then she was leaving anyway because they didn't seem to be providing information to say, why she had to show proof of her student, proof that she was a student when she had an ID card that said, our university and student on it. And then she also, I think she left, to my knowledge, she left. Um, and I thought about that in context of liberation, in context of conversation about how sometimes when people won't leave a space, the police are called, and how for some people, the police don't represent, or their experience isn't officer friendly. It isn't. And those are challenging conversations to have in a space because it's like there's some people that cannot relate or have no knowledge of what it's like to be policed. They have no knowledge of that. So how do I explain that to you? And how will you understand that for me when you're designing anything, a system, a website, a platform? You never had that experience. You've never had to prove your existence to have a basic human dignity service. You've never had that experience. How do I explain that? And I think about this also because I went to a talk yesterday, or listened to a talk on anti-racism in medicine, and they were talking about the free clinics that were created in the 70s, and how when we think about care in medicine, and it relates, I promise you it does, because the basic point of all of that is we're talking about humanity and dignity. And whether you're talking about humanity and dignity of Black life, humanity and dignity of all life, it's like, how do you see that? How do I teach you to care about me? How do I teach you to see me as human when for some people, they don't even see you as a right to exist? They don't. And I don't know how you teach that. And that was one of the questions that was asked during that conversation, that is an issue. Because when you think about medical care, the responsibility of the healthcare provider is to provide service based on whatever is the issue, is an ailment. And how do they do that? That isn't just the procedures they do. That isn't just the medicine that they prescribe or don't prescribe. It is ethics of care. It is humanity. It is dignity. And when you look at the movement of Black lives, the issue is not that any of those other groups don't exist or don't have needs too. The issue is that oftentimes there is zero ethics of care or dignity given to Black life, be it Black women, Black queer, Black trans, Black LGBTQIAS, just Black people. It's just not. And I don't know how you teach that. And it seems like you have all these videos and you have all these images and you have all of these things that are being shown, yet I can't relegate, I can't say what you should see. Because you can watch the same video I see on any topic, and what you see and what I see, two different things. How do I make it truth? Because the truth is, in many cases, what has happened, but how you see it can often be varied. And that in itself is, I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't know how you solve that. And I'm still, trying to figure it out. But I think about these things as we continue. I was trying to find this one thing that I had saved from my class the other day, because I think it's the wrap up, if we will. Give me a minute. I hope what I have said is interesting to you. But these are just thoughts at the water cooler that I'm thinking about. Did it open it up? Hang on, it might open it up. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I found it. Yeah, I'm gonna close with this because I've given you a lot of topics. And it might seem like they're all over the place. I hope that it doesn't, but they're not. Because I think, at the forefront is you have to think about people's experiences, the lived experiences people have, people's identities, the intersections that occur. And we were reading last week before last, I think it's Donna Haraway, interesting scholar. A lot of her work is meaty. So I found a lot of gems in it, yet it was a lot to get through. But I think it relates to this book because it was talking about, I'm finding it. Okay, where is it at? I see this here. Oh, histories of science may be powerfully told as history of technologies. The technologies are way of life, social orders, and practice of visualization. Technologies are skill practices. But I think the deeper question of all of this is how to see, where to see from, what limits vision, whom to see with, who gets to have more than one point of view, who gets blinded, who wears blinders, who interprets the visual field. What other sensory powers do we wish to cultivate besides vision? And I think about that because when you're talking about, whether you're talking about digital spaces and looking at historic movements, be it the free clinic, be it Black Lives Matter, or interpretations of other groups that co-op or adapt, if you will, that phrase, then I think you are asking how to see and where to see from. You are asking, what does Black liberation look like? How does that look in academic spaces, in everyday life spaces? How do you define that? And how do you define that for people who may or may not see you? And sometimes it's purposeful and sometimes it's blinders because the only thing they see is their life. So how do you get them to include differences in identity, differences in expression, differences in gender, differences in race, differences in belief, differences in ideas? I think that's the deeper questions of how. And I'm still trying to figure out what that means and how you do that. But I think that comes up in more ways than a theoretical level and a research level. That comes together in an everyday life. And I think we need to be having real discussions about how we do that, even if it causes dissent. Because one of and I didn't share that, but it was also talking about how the book was talking about how social media is used to disrupt silence. Yet we often don't talk about how social media and people use dissent in ways of doing things. But the challenge with dissent is not that people disagree. It's sometimes people are disruptive, but they're disruptive using the wrong tactics. And I don't mean wrong. Yeah, I do mean wrong. I mean wrong tactics. Sometimes they use disruptions as a way to be antithetical and bullyish to groups of people. And then you don't get to hear the truth. You just get to hear lived experience. And that in itself can be a challenge, because how do you then connect people's lived experience or the challenges people might be experiencing in their life to something that you can actually fix? That in itself has become a real challenge. And I think that's the challenge of social space, because you create all these people that get to, and, and some of those people don't mean other groups of people any good. They just don't. But they're being disruptive. That's what they're doing. And I always love that the vlogger, I can't remember who it is, but she talks about how people on these internet, and but when you meet them in real life, they don't have anything to say. Or better yet, they're just disruptive. And it's like more than one thing is occurring at one time, and I don't know how you fix that. And that's as much of as a part of the conversation as it is to talk about groups that have adapted slogans or studying movements or the way that information has been weaponized against groups of people. So certain groups of people get labeled as terrorists when they're real terrorists that are out here. They get to and be free in these societies and cause harm. Yet we're trying to create a space that includes thought and includes support for all people, even the parts we don't like, even the parts we are unwilling to address, even the parts we are unwilling to call what it is. I'm still out on what we do about that, but I just thought I'd share that. I hope y'all have a great day. Thanks for listening. Peace. Be good to yourself. Go be good to others, okay? All right. Take care. Bye.